Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Denmark once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I think it is fair to say that these days this brewery is known mainly for their imperial stouts and also for their different kinds of IPA, but definitely a very solid all-round brewery in my experience, and one of the Danish breweries that I would highly recommend that you check out. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is somewhat of a special occasion beer for them, but it's also a style that I've never come across before actually. So those were the two things that really sold this beer to me when I saw it in Kiosk over in Copenhagen. And it's also a German style of beer as well actually. And as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a massive fan of the traditional German beers. So very, very curious to see how this one turns out, needless to say. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Jylland, which is the mainland part of Denmark attached to Germany. We're going to go to the north of Jylland to Ålborg, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Bad Seed Brewing. So this particular beer is called Number 100 or Batch 100. I'm not sure exactly how this one should be pronounced, if we can say that. But this one comes in at 10.5% ABV. It is their 100th recipe from what I understand. And this is an Adambier. So yeah, I'll give you a full style explanation of this later on, but the Adambier is an ale from Dortmund in Germany, known mainly of course for the Dortmunder Helles styles of beer, but yeah, it's a big malty ale, this one actually. It can be a little bit sour and also a little bit smoky from what I understand. So yeah, this should be very, very interesting. But this is my very, very first review of an Adambier, so I think I'll need to go down to Dortmund and see if I can find any local examples of this one after this review. But yeah, after 3,200 reviews, to come across a beer style that you'd never heard of before is pretty special actually, and especially as well since it's the 100th recipe released from Bad Seed Brewing too. So yeah, really looking forward to this, as I said earlier. Big shout out in this review to my friend Peter, the Master of Hoppets, who also works at Bad Seed Brewing, so he's probably had some involvement in brewing this beer actually. So I'll put the link to his channel in the video description for you below. You can go and check out his reviews. Very, very nice guy and very knowledgeable about his beer, of course. You have to be a brewer. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we got on. Certainly nice to return to Bad Seed Brewing after a couple of months, I think it's been. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Bad Seed Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly because I live in Skåne in the south of Sweden. I go across to Copenhagen a lot. I love my Danish beers, so I always bring lots back with me. And yeah, always good to review the Danish beers here on the channel. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Bad Seed Brewing once again. So Bad Seed Brewing, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2015 by Frederick Hector Schmidt. So he had been working in a beer store in Ålborg called Ølkonsortiet. I believe Peter used to work there at one point as well, Master of Hoppets. But while he was there, he became good friends with a guy who homebrewed, and so he started to join in. But he continued to experiment and joined a homebrewing community and just kind of honed his skills over the next little while. Later on, he moved to Copenhagen and he took an internship at Nørrebro, and he also worked for a few other breweries before setting up Bad Seed Brewing as his own venture. But he started brewing at Ølkollektivet in Gørløse in the northwest of Copenhagen, home of course to Osnegern, Dry and Bitter, and until recently Gamma Brewing as well. He was brewing there as a sort of phantom gypsy brewery, and I think it was Osnagern who were actually brewing a number of the Bad Seed Brewing beers under contract for a while. But when he was there, he developed his first beer, which was the Lazarus IPA, which we reviewed on the channel not that long ago. But he also was working as a bar manager for Brewers Inc. at the same time, but these days they now have their own brewery facility just outside of Ålborg, which began production in October of 2018. So over the last few years, they've basically been building up the infrastructure of the brewery, developing new recipes, and been doing very well from what I understand. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 100 different recipes, of course, which is what this beer is named after, but Untappd has 85 different ones listed, of course. So yeah, that is pretty cool actually. But that is all I can tell you about Bad Seed Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And as I said, you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So like I said to you, I am going to give you a little bit of a style descriptor of what an Adambier is. So it says here, and this is a website called Beer Maverick. So this style originated in Dortmund. It's a strong, dark, hoppy ale which may or may not be sour. It may also be extensively aged in wooden barrels. Traditional versions may have been low or medium, have had a low or medium-low degree of smokiness, but Adambier may or may not use wheat in its formulation. Smoke character may be absent in contemporary versions. Fruited versions of this style which exhibit attributes of wood aging should be categorised as fruited wood and barrel-aged sour beers, and fruited versions of this style which do not exhibit attributes of wood aging should be categorised as fruit wheat beers. But yeah, it gives you a kind of rough flavour description of what you should expect from these. So these are quite, from the sounds of it, they are kind of big brown sugary beers. They can be a bit smoky, they can be a bit sour as well. And yeah, it uses an ale fermentation. So remember, the main difference between an ale and a lager is the temperature of fermentation. Lagers use bottom fermenting yeasts, which ferment at lower temperatures, usually 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, whereas ales ferment at higher temperatures, usually about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, and that's top fermenting yeast, as I said. So yeah, that's a kind of rough descriptor of what we should expect from an Adambier, but a big brown ale, if you like, if we can call it that, from Dortmund, which is of course more famous for the Dortmunder Helles beers. So yeah, this should be pretty cool. But like we said, 10.5% beer, this one. I think the best thing to do now is to just take a little look at the can and then crack it open. So as you can see, artwork on this one is a little bit different from what we've had before. From Bad Seed Brewing, there you can see the Bad Seed Brewing symbol. You've also got a nice little explanation for the beer on the side here, and it tells you about this too. To celebrate our 100th brew, we have brewed this Adambier, an old German style of strong ale rooted in tradition of the city of Dortmund. It's a rich, dark and satisfying ale brewed with a wide range of differing malts, both caramelized, roasted and smoked, to recreate a complex ale with notes of dark fruits, leather, honey and chocolate. Drink fresh or age for up to 5 years. Yeah, so this should be quite nice actually. As I say, I'm just very curious about this, so I really wanted to try it. But you can see plain silver cap on this one. This is a 330ml. You don't often see 330ml from Bad Seed Brewing these days. Most of their beers are 440s, but I can kind of understand why they would do this one there. And you can feel when you're holding the can, this beer is actually quite dense. I can't remember what I paid for this one, but it wasn't that expensive, to be honest with you. And as I say, you don't come across an Adambier every day. This was one of these kind of, fuck it, why not moments. So yeah, let's crack this guy open and see how we get on then. The batch 100, number 100, an Adambier from Bad Seed Brewing near Ålborg on Jylland in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one and see how we go. Yeah. Ooh, I think this is going to be really interesting. But ooh, look at that pour. That is nice. I'm just very, very curious to see what we're going to get out of this beer. I love trying new beers, but as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I love smoky beers. I love big kind of brown sugary beers. So this one should be right up my alley, and it seemed to have a good rating on Untappd when I checked it out earlier on as well. Let me just line that up so that my OCD is happy. I think I'll need to keep this can, of course, as well. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured very nicely. So before the head disappears, I think it's fair to say that this beer has poured with a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say very light beige, kind of fawn coloured head. That's fading away to just be a kind of thin foamy layer on top, but there's a nice kind of ring just sitting around the edge of the glass there. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice. In terms of colour, if we put the light through this one, it looks like a very, very dark Doppelbock. It has this very, very dark, chestnutty, ebony rosewood type colour to it, actually. It really, really looks just like a very big kind of like Rauchbock or something like that. That's probably, if we're talking German style beers, that's probably the most comparable thing we have to it. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Whether the Adambier has a longer wort boil than this kind of standard 90 minutes, I honestly don't know. Couldn't really find any information on that. But yeah, any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do will of course affect the colour of the beer. And as you say, this one, I don't think this one, it didn't mention that this one had been barrel aged or whatever. But yeah, certainly a really random idea, and a very cool idea actually for Bad Seed Brewing to do an Adambier of all things for batch number 100. So yeah, as I say, as far as I'm aware, if you're doing a big malty beer like this is the kind of colour you should get from it. So yeah, as I say, we need to go to Dortmund and have a little look at some of these. We need to go to Dortmund at some stage and try some of these. That's one of my German beer trips that I have planned. Go to Dortmund to try the different Helles beers, go to Dusseldorf to try the Alt beers, and go to Köln to try the different Kölsches. Do all 3 cities in one trip. That would be awesome. But yeah, beautiful looking beer, this one. It kind of just looks like a big Doppelbock, to be honest with you, if we're comparing it to other German styles. So yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of this one. Let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Oh, now that's interesting. First impression of it is that it does have that kind of cleanliness that you would expect of a kind of German lager beer in some ways, if we can call it that. I always find the German beers are very kind of clean and crisp in their nature, so you've got a bit of that going on with it. But at the same time, you can smell there's almost a wee touch of like a kind of slightly fruity, sour character. You've got a bit of woodiness in there, and you do have a bit of smokiness. So maybe what they're going to do with this one, just based on the aroma, I think they're maybe going to try and incorporate a little bit of everything that we've just read about in the style description of this one. Maybe that's what they're kind of going to do here. So yeah, it's got a wee bit of everything that we would expect from what I've read about the Adambier style in it. But it's a really interesting smelling beer, this one. It's kind of like a slightly more woody and fruity Doppelbock. It's almost like a slightly oxidised Doppelbock, actually, if you get that. So that's interesting. Let's break this aroma down for you then and see how we go. So if we sugar the beer up a little bit, then underneath it, you absolutely get a little bit of this kind of smooth, almost like beach oaky kind of thing out of it. It does, the backbone of this one actually does remind me of, the Fasten beer, actually. It's the kind of woody characters that you get out of the Fasten beer from Schlenkerla. It's got a little bit of that going on. So yeah, it's got a very smooth, slightly beechwoody, oaky type vibe. So I'd say it's more beechwood than oaky. Oak has a little bit of that more kind of smooth vanilla type note to it. I'd say it's got a little bit more of that kind of beechwoody sort of thing. They used to, of course, roast their malt with wood kilns and things, with wood burning kilns back in the day. So it makes sense that you would get an element of kind of smokiness and woodiness in these beers. So yeah, there's definitely like a woody, smooth backbone to this one. You've got a wee bit of bread crust in there. Absolutely. Some nice brown bready characters, of course, as well. You do get an element of kind of smoke out of this one. It's not really an overly... It's a little bit of a more kind of meaty smoke, if you like, but obviously it is nowhere near as pungent as the likes of Schlenkerla or even like Spezial or something. It's more just a very slight hint. So probably there's just a teeny hint of like a Rauch malt or something in this, but there's definitely a wee element of that in there. And as I say, the smoky character that you get out of this, it really smells like Bamberg Rauch malt. It really does. So yeah, woodiness, brown bread crust, a bit of that kind of almost German rye bready character coming out of it. Within that bready note, you've got a wee touch of a kind of Bamberg Rauch malt. And then on top of that, you've got some nice brown sugary elements in there. So definitely a little bit of a kind of toasty brown sugar. You've got a wee bit of a kind of leathery type brown sugar there. As I've explained in other reviews, when you do a slightly longer wort boil, the brown sugars will start to show a little bit of a leathery character. You can absolutely smell a little bit of that in this one. So I'd be very curious to know what the length of the wort boil was with this beer. I guess maybe a couple of hours or something like that. I don't think they're going to just do a 90-minute wort boil with a beer like this, to be honest with you. But yeah, you do get that lovely leathery, caramelly, leathery brown sugary note in there. There's a wee bit of biscuit mixed in with that, and there are some kind of sweet caramelly notes too. But the backbone of this beer, I think, is very, very nice actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in this regard. I really like how this one. I do really like how this one goes about its business for sure. So aroma wise, the malty side of this beer, I think, works. Aroma wise, the malty side of this beer is really, really interesting. The more that I smell of it, it doesn't have so much of a kind of sour vibe to it, but you do just get a little bit of a red fruity, kind of slightly, it's like an oxidised red fruity kind of thing coming out of this one. But yeah, that's very interesting. I don't think there's much else to say about the malty side of this one and the kind of woody side, if that makes sense. This is going to be really good to try, I think. I think I'm going to enjoy this. On the hoppy side of things, it's a typical kind of German noble hop aroma that you're getting from this, but it feels like it's, I don't know when they would have made this beer actually. Does it have a canned on date? It says Best Buy. It was packaged November 2021. So yeah, it's been in the can for like 4 months or something like that, probably at this time. So yeah, but when it's a beer like this, you don't have to care about that so much. But yeah, you get a bit of that smooth, noble character out of it. There's a smooth bit of earthiness in there, a wee bit of a herbal character, a little bit of a kind of floral note going on, but obviously the floral character is very smooth, and you get a wee touch of a kind of smooth but slightly lighter grassiness coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, I really like how this one, I really do like how this one goes about its business in that regard. The hoppy side of the beer is just very smooth, but yeah, it works. So on the fruity side of things, when you take the aroma in, it makes me wonder if there is a little bit of Northern Brewer in this, which is quite a popular hop to use when it comes to Doppelbocks actually. And this beer really isn't a million miles away from a Doppelbock in terms of aroma. It's, as I say, on the fruity side of things, you've got a wee bit of this kind of sharper, raisiny note to it. It has got a little bit of a kind of dry, plummy element as well. There's a wee bit of just that oxidizer sort of thing, like a kind of black. There's a little bit of a kind of black curranty sort of vibe to it, and yeah, it's got a wee bit of just this. It's kind of sharper red fruits you get out of this. Bit of raisin, bit of plum, bit of black currant, and maybe a bit of a slightly more oily blackberry. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business is very, very nice in my opinion. So yeah, I think this beer is definitely worth taking a bit of time to ponder over. And of course, when you encounter a new beer style after 3,200 reviews, it is pretty special. So think about that when it comes to this one. Yeah, I like this. So a big thumbs up from me to this one from Bad Seed. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder that aroma over. It smells like a really interesting beer, like almost like a slightly oxidised Doppelbock with a wee bit of a Rauchbocky backbone to it. But yeah, interesting stuff. So let's crack into this one then and see how we go. So this is the batch number 100, an Adambier at 10.5% ABV from Bad Seed Brewing, just outside of Ålborg on Jylland in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh. I like that. I do, but I can't see, to be honest with you, I knew I was going to like it. If it's dark malty, it's got a bit of smoke to it and a bit of woodiness, I would definitely enjoy this. I knew I was definitely going to enjoy it. You know, see, to be honest with you, when I taste this is very akin to some of the Scotch ales. It really is actually. It reminds me to a degree of the. It really does remind me to a degree of the 160 shilling from Tracker House Brewery in Scotland. It's really like that. This beer is very, very close to a Scotch ale. If I tasted this blind, I would probably think it was a Scotch ale. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. I actually remember having a very strong beer from Vetters in Heidelberg that was quite similar to this one. But yeah, this is really just like a 160 shilling Scotch ale. It's really very, very close to that. But it's a lovely beer, this one. So thumbs up to Bad Seed Brewing for this. They've done a really good job of this. I can't comment on this beer in terms of authenticity, but it's a good beer nonetheless, and to be honest, you can't ask for much more than that. So I definitely do need to go to Dortmund and seek out some of these Adambiers. Yeah, very cool. But yeah, this is very similar to like a big 160 shilling Scotch ale. As I say, the closest thing I've had to this in recent times would be some of the stuff from Tracker House Brewery in Scotland. So if you've had this one and you like that, do go and check out Tracker House. This is quite similar to a Scotch ale in many ways. Just slightly different in the way it goes about its flavours, but beautiful beer. Love it. So, where do we start with this one then? Middle third of your palate. So, backbone of the beer. It's a mix. You've got this kind of smooth, slightly dry, beechwoody sort of thing, and I would say toward the back of that middle third of the palate, it's a bit drier, but as you come further forward, it sort of smoothens out and mellows out a little bit. But on top of that, you get a little bit of a more kind of rough, bread crusty sort of thing. So you get a little bit of that kind of rough rye, bread crusty kind of thing. And then, yeah, on top of that, you get a slightly thicker kind of brown rye bready character coming out of it as well, which I think is very nice. It really is. It's got a lot of similarities to a Doppelbock in some ways, but it's very, very similar to some of these big Scotch ales as well, actually. As you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I love big malty sort of beers. Of course, the big difference between a Doppelbock and this one would be that this is an ale, so it is a bit kind of thicker in a way than a Doppelbock. It is really just akin to a Scotch ale, this one. It's almost like an ale version of a Doppelbock, basically. I think that's another good way to describe this beer. The thing is as well, I'm curious about this. It does say it only contains boog malt, which is just barley malt. So this is a barley malt only beer, this one, but it's very, very thick in its bready character. So I wouldn't have been surprised if it had just a little bit of wheat in it. But yeah, beechwoody backbone, bread crust, lovely thick brown bready characters, and then on top of that, you can feel like, well, mixed in with that brown bready sort of thing, there is a little bit of a kind of smoky character which I very much enjoy. So that gets a thumbs up from me in this regard too. So yeah, I do like that about this beer. So on top of the kind of smoky brown bready sort of thing you can feel that nice leathery, brown sugary layer coming out of the beer. So yeah, as I say, I suspect there's been a bit of a longer wort boil with this one. That will contribute to the colour as well. So you've got, that nice leathery brown sugary layer, and that lingers there into the aftertaste. The further into the aftertaste that you go, the kind of big leathery brown sugary character sits there, and the whole beer gets a bit drier, to be honest with you. But yeah, I do really like how it goes about its I do really like how it goes about its business in that sense. But when you go into you've got that leathery kind of brown sugary, it's like a big circle, and then as you go further in to the centre of the circle, you can feel it gets a little bit more like a kind of treacly molasses sort of thing, but the more concentrated brown sugars in the middle are like a more treacly molasses sort of thing, and then as you move further out, it actually gets a little bit sweeter and almost slightly biscuity in a sense. So you've got that leathery brown sugary layer, the concentrated treacle molasses in the middle, which is covering the booziness of the beer. It gets a bit sweeter as you go further out, then a bit biscuity. I think that's a good way to kind of describe how this beer is going about its business. So, pardon me. Yeah, the way that goes about its business is it's really cool. The malty side of this beer, I very much like it, but as I say, it's very, very akin to a Scotch ale. It really is. Yeah, two ways to describe it I think that are most accurate. It's like an ale, a slightly thicker ale version of a Doppelbock, or it's like a big 160 shilling export Scotch ale. It's very, very much like that. Beautiful beer, I love this. So I do definitely need to go and seek out some more Adambiers now. But let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of bread crusty build up there. The base of the back third of the palate's the same, the smooth kind of woody thing. It's a bit drier. On top of that, you've got a thicker brown bready character out of it, and the brown bread, of course, is a little bit more kind of grainy, but it still retains some of that kind of rye bready type sweetness. And then on top of that, you can feel a little bit of the you can feel the kind of yeasty character to this one. So the yeasty character feels a little bit more like a very dense German, like doughy rye bread sort of thing. There's a wee bit of a more kind of grainy outside to it, and you can feel that bit of dryness on the top of it there. But yeah, it is very, very nice. So on the back third of the palate, again, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. Then as you come further forward and go into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down a wee bit, but and the flavours are a bit more squashed together. But yeah, this is a big malty beast of a beer, this one. I really like it. I do really like it. Yeah, it works. So on the hoppy side of things then, it's kind of as I described to you in the aroma. It's got a lot of that noble character, but you can feel this beer is a little bit older, so the kind of hoppy character has smoothened out and just kind of chilled out a wee bit, if we can say it that way. So the back corners of the palate, there's a wee bit of a smooth earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a herbal character, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a wee bit of a more kind of grassy sort of thing too. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. Yeah, smooth earthiness, a little bit of a herbally character, and as you reach towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a wee bit of a more kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing. But again, the floral character is quite smooth. Round the front curve of the palate, it's a bit lighter and grassy. There's a teeny wee bit of zestiness to it, but otherwise the grassy character it's quite bright, but as I say, still quite smooth. So I do like how that goes together. Yeah. So yeah, I think that just leaves the fruity side of this beer, which is interesting. Yeah, so the fruity side of the beer, I was saying that in the aroma I was picking up this kind of slightly oxidised kind of fruity character to it, but it's not really like that in the kind of flavour in a way, we should say. So border region between front third and middle third palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there again. It's almost it has a little bit of an almost kind of the texture of like a chocolate brownie, but I don't get so much chocolate flavour out of this one. For me, this is like a very dry kind of brown bread. A lot of people say you get chocolate out of Doppelbocks. I don't necessarily agree with that. I find them very kind of bready and slightly cakey almost in a sense. So you do get this kind of dry, fruit loaf, cakey kind of vibe out of the beer. But then the base of that front 30 palate is a very smooth kind of brown bready character. And I really like that with this one as well. This beer's got a very nice, it has got a very nice bready backbone to the fruity notes, and then on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on those then. So when you first take the beer in, it has a wee bit of sharpness to it, so there's a wee bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to it, absolutely. So yeah, a little bit of a raisiny sharpness in there. but when you take it in, it really smoothens out a lot more. Underneath that, you get a little bit of this kind of like plummy dryness. Absolutely, there's a wee bit of that kind of plummy, prune. Sorry, I think prune is a dry plum. Brain's not working, so yeah, you've got a bit of that kind of pruniness there. But then on the back of the palate underneath, you do get a little bit of a kind of figgy thing, and as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it definitely shows you a little bit more of a kind of black curranty base, and there's a wee bit of a blackberry sitting on top of it. So the way that that goes together is quite nice. I do, again, I can appreciate how I can certainly appreciate how the fruity side of this beer goes together. The fruity side of it is very similar to a Doppelbock actually, but it's maybe got a bit more of the kind of dry fruity character that you would expect of a Scotch ale. This beer really is in the middle of those two styles. It's like an ale, as I've said, I've repeated a few times, this is like an ale version of a Doppelbock. The breadiness is just bigger and the whole thing feels thicker, but it's also very akin to like a 160 shilling Scotch ale, one of the really high malt content ones. But it's a lovely beer. This I've enjoyed this. This is right up my street. I love Belgian quadruples. I love the Scotch ales, the Doppelbocks. The barley wines kind of give you a little bit of this vibe as well. So I like these big brown sugary beers. This one is absolutely right up my street, so it gets a massive thumbs up from me. Need to seek out some of the original German examples of this style. Absolutely. Yeah, I suppose the thing that really separates this from the Scotch ale and as I say, it's similar to the Scotch ale, but the thing that really separates it is the noble hop character, and also the kind of smoothness of the bready thing. That's the thing that really makes it German rather than Scottish, because the Scottish bread would be a little bit more grainy than this. It wouldn't be quite as smooth, and the hoppy character as well would be a little bit more herbal. So yeah, that's what makes this style kind of distinctively more German in a sense, because I suspect they'll be using a bit of Northern Brewer in this. So yeah, and they will be using German malts. It's easy to get German malts up into Denmark. Makes sense. But yeah, lovely beer. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So mouthfeel wise, definitely it's kind of bottom end of full bodied for maybe middle end of full bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely big oily slickness to it. Beautiful beer, as I've repeated a few times. But in terms of the IBU and things in this, I don't think this has got too much IBU. I think this might be like 20 IBUs. You do get a bit of dryness out of it, but there's always that conflation. Is that kind of dryness you get out of it bitter, or is it just dryness? What do you say about that side of the beer? But the malty character in it is lovely. That it's not too bitter. I think 20-25 IBUs is probably about right for this one. The malty character has got a lovely dryness to it. You've got a big bready character. You've also got a bit of a kind of dry sweetness in there as well. The yeasty character gives it a wee bit more dryness too. And you've also got this big oily, sweet but dry fruity character. Really interesting beer, this one, and a very positive experience for my first Adambier. If it hadn't been for Bad Seed doing this one and me just wondering what it was in Kiosk, I never would have heard of this style of beer. And I think that is very, very cool actually. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the batch 100, a 10.5% Adambier, which seems to be like somewhere between a German Doppelbock and a Scotch ale, a very high strength Scotch ale, from Bad Seed Brewing in Ålborg in Northern Jylland over in Denmark. Enjoyed this one. Probably the best review I've had from these guys so far, although Good Morning Vietnam, the coffee imperial stout, is very nice, and I do recommend you check that one out. So do have a go at this beer if you come across it. But happy 100th batch to Bad Seed Brewing for this one. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media. Check out Bad Seed Brewing. Check out their social media as well. Check out my friend Peter over at the Master of Hoppets, who probably had some involvement in brewing this beer. He works for Bad Seed, as we mentioned earlier. But yeah, very, very cool to have a go at my first ever Adambier. But thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one. The Batch 100 Adambier, 10.5% ABV from Ålborg, Jylland, Denmark. Slanja, Skull. See you guys on the next review. The next one will be coming to you from Scotland.